December 2nd, 2010 to order. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Yes, sir. Chairman McMillan?
Here.
Vice Chairman Mackey?
Present.
Mr. Andrepont?
Here.
Mrs. Griffin? Present. Mr. Hassan?
Here.
Mrs. Trimming? Here. And President Guidry?
Yes, here.
Everyone's here.
Thank you. Item 3, hold a public meeting at 5 p.m. as advertised in accordance with the Local Government Budget Act to allow the public an opportunity to provide input on the proposed parish budget fiscal year 2011 as presented in the Budget Committee on November 18th, 2010. What I'd like to do is, if there are any members in the audience that would like to speak at this public hearing, please fill out one of these blue slips right here and get it up to our desk, and they'll get it up to me. They're found in the back of the room, and try to submit that up to staff. We're also going to give an opportunity for the jurors that are in the audience to speak also. At this present time, I'll go to Mr. Bean.
Well, the budget as presented, Mr. Chairman, is the same, and I would suggest if you have any comments or questions from committee members, and then any jurors in the audience who would like to speak, followed by the public input, that might be a good order.
Thank you, Mr. Bean. Is there anybody on the Budget Committee at this time that'd like to speak on or discuss anything on behalf of the budget? Mr. Andrepont.
I do have a comment. I don't want to speak on the budget. I don't know if we can proceed with this meeting. Mr. Atherton is not here.
We'll try to slip by. We got Mr. Porm in his place.
Thank you for the floor.
Is there any police jurors in the audience that'd like to come up and address the Budget Committee at this time? Mr. Scott? State your name, district, I don't know, a few other things for us. No.
Dennis Scott, District 6, 5'6", 155, give or take a little. Mr. Chairman, if it please you, I'd like to just make a recommendation to the committee that under our animal services right now, we have budgeted in right at $63,000 to kind of begin to deal with this coyote situation. What I would like to do is take away that $63,000, go back to our original, which would basically be 9 officers. I would like to see it go back to 9 officers. We've been working with 8, effectively budgeted at 9. Now, we could always do better, and I'm sure Mr. Wainwright would agree with me. We could always use more money. But for this problem, I would like to show the public that we are good stewards of their money, and we're willing to use what we have to look into a problem before we throw new money at a problem that we're not quite sure exactly how much it's going to cost. I would leave the floor open in April once we haven't used some of this existing money that was budgeted and that we just move forward, that we'd come back in April once we've actually attacked this problem a little bit, which would give us the opportunity to know how much money we would actually be looking at, and then we could budget in money.
Or amend the budget, I guess.
Amend the budget.
Yeah. With that being said, Mr. Bean.
I had talked to Mr. Scott earlier. Just to give you a little bit of background, the timing really is the issue. Back when the departments were asked to present budgets, y'all were starting to get public input and all on the wildlife issue. Alan and I had several discussions on that. We agreed, go ahead and put some funds in the event they go a route, the police jury goes the route of wanting to address this so that we don't have to come back. But by our recommendations to the Public Works Committee, we clearly don't intend to utilize that unless you approve it. So it is in the budget. And these were just numbers to give y'all an estimate of what we could be. The education effort, even in the trapping money, the trapper services, cost of traps are all estimates. We don't intend to utilize that even though the money is in there. But just to clarify, that's why we had put it. Just because it was timing, the budgets had to go in. So it's your choice, of course, but if you don't amend the budget, we're not going to go ahead and fill that 10th officer position. We just had that in there, but that's your call.
Mr. Scott, in hearing that explanation, would you, if we do this on a interim deal where the money's left in there and we don't spend it unless it's addressed to the entire jury. Would that be something we could work a compromise with?
I don't think we were going to, according to all the discussions we've had, we keep saying we're not going to spend it. Hopefully we're not going to spend a lot of it. Well, by having it in there, it's a blank check, and we're ready to spend it at any given time. Now, yes, they come and ask for it, but it's in the budget. So as a good steward of the people's money, because personally I've not got one person that has come to me and beat me down, given me the, I'm glad y'all are in the coyote business. All of my constituents and the people I've dealt with have said, I can't believe you're in the coyote business. But I agree that people have problems and we need to work towards, getting some resolutions. So I believe we can take the money that we have now and use it effectively in working towards this problem. And then from that point, in April, we'll know more. We'll have seen something, we'll have done some things, and then in April we can come back and say, hey, here's what we need and this is why we need it. So that's still my recommendation, but it's just a recommendation.
Okay, and just from a clarification point on earlier discussion that I had as a member of the ad hoc committee, it's nuisance animals. It's not just coyotes. We've got a problem with feral hogs, coy dogs, as well as beavers and even armadillos here in this parish. We need somebody that can help us overall, not just coyotes. And where you may have had folks that have come to you and say, I can't believe you're in the business, I've had a lot of response from my constituents saying, thank you for addressing a problem that it looks like nobody else would effectively take care of for this parish. So I understand your conviction, but I also, and what I was saying a moment ago, if it's left in the budget, one of the things that I would like to see is that money would not be spent without consent of this jury. And that's kind of the compromise I was looking for with you on that, that leave it in the budget and, it be on a case by case with consent of the jury. And I leave that to discussion with my other budget members. Mr. Anderpont.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur with you, and if I appreciate what I heard Brian say is that it's in there, and we have never spent, as long as I've been on this jury, and I didn't just show up last month, we have never spent any funds or misspent any funds, let me rephrase that, on any item that's ever been in the agenda, in the budget for approval. So while I respect Mr. Scott's request, I can't support that.
Thank you. Mr. Bean?
I left one thing out that probably help a bit. What you said a minute ago, Hal, where the full jury's consent, your action, there's an item on the full jury's meeting tonight, which really is what that would be doing in that Public Works recommendation, where we asked for up to $20,000. I think it was adjusted by that's the consent. So where you're saying, look, you can use some of that budgeted money, but no more than 20. The $10,000 for the educational effort, we would come back to you after plan is done with a more precise number. That was just a cost estimate. So that really does put some limits to where we wouldn't go past the 20 anyway. And frankly, I don't see us coming anywhere near that. It's a targeted problem, but we just had to have some estimate.
Thank you, Mr. Bean. Mr. Scott?
And only on speaking back with Mr. Anderpont, I know we haven't misspent money, and I appreciate that, but the perception of the public right now in government is use what you have, use it responsibly, no more government. This is just adding more to the budget for money that I feel we already have in the budget to look at a problem. I just didn't feel like we needed new money to look at a problem where we can use what we have existing, and that was my whole intent. So thank you.
And in response to that, it's only being budgeted. It's not being spent, and it won't be spent without us. It's just in the budget. That's the key component I see. Ms. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I most certainly appreciate your thoughts about the funds that we have allocated that's in the budget. I can't support it because we don't know what we're dealing with, but we do know we're dealing with human lives. And just on yesterday, I spoke with a nurse who told me that she sees coyotes frequently on the west side. Because we're dealing with human lives and because this money will not be spent unless it's needed, I cannot support taking it out the budget, but I appreciate your thought. Thank you,
Ms.
sir.
Griffin. Any other discussion by any other jurors?
I just moved to approve the 2011 budget for.
Well, hold on just a
Excuse
second.
me,
We got some
You
public
need to
hearing
get your
stuff.
public input, and then
Yeah.
Sandy, item 4 I think would be appropriate motion on that one if y'all let the public speak.
I thought they already had.
No, we have some public input. That was just yours. Any other jurors? Thank you, Mr. Scott, for your comments. Appreciate it. Any other jurors that would like to speak on the 2011 budget? At this time, Daniel Phillips. Mark Parham. State your name and address for the record, please.
Mark Parham, 3065 Old Town Road, Lake Charles. Just a few quick questions. Back to what Mr. Scott was saying. 9 employees in animal service, that's correct?
Go ahead, Mr. Wainwright.
9 officers are being budgeted. There's more
9.
employees in that.
How come on the summary page it shows 33 employees?
Again, that's 9 officers.
9 patrol officers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the other ones are kennel workers and such?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Workers,
fine.
administrative staff.
That's fine. Like I said, just a few quick questions. The solid waste fund, any movements yet on the outlying trash areas? Any works yet?
Well, the next item is to actually, they just approved the extensions, police jury did, of the 2 contracts through the end of 2011. The solid waste committee would meet on that, but it hasn't officially. We don't have a date yet, but that will be in the near future.
Okay,
I don't
thank
have
you,
an
sir.
exact date.
The Prion Lake Park budget, I noticed y'all took the funds out of it. The 225 budgeted, is that the anticipated contract that's maybe awarded, part of it?
Mr. Wainwright, is that the grass cutting? Is that what you're talking about?
It sure sounds like it without turning to that page specifically. Yes, sir. That's the estimate on the lawn
Page
care.
267.
It's roughly the estimate on the lawn care service.
All right. Mr. Parham?
Okay, thank you. The gaming funds, how is that actually divided throughout the parish? And also, I've heard numerous people speak that every year there's $1 million that is given to the jurors to spend as you see between the 8 wards. Is that so?
Let's go with the first question.
Okay.
If you want a division of the gaming funds, and we'll talk about
Right. I know how it was laid out, how Mr. Beam laid it out as far as cities and such. Just maybe he could do it one more time.
Yeah, if I understand the question right, you're talking about the
How it's divided.
the ward
Pool.
Yeah, there is the pooling. When we use the term a pooling district, that refers to what was in state law that was allowed for Calcasieu, which you and the city of Lake Charles entered an agreement for, to where the funds that after funds are taken off the top for the educational institutions, again per state law, and Port of Lake Charles, and what is small cities allocation of $1 million, and the police jury and city split the rest. Of the police jury's gaming funds that come out of that overall pool, police jury has allocated, and this is a practice that's been in place several years, $1 million to what we call ward allocations, wards 1 through 8. So it's not a police jury district allocation, it's wards, to be used primarily for services such as fire protection, drainage, water, and the special service districts.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, looking at your little pie chart, I didn't even write down the page. Yeah, I did. Page 30. $29 million actually comes into the police jury. I believe that's through property taxes. $34 million is collected, and it says it goes to other or other parish services. What is other?
Hang on just a second. Give them an opportunity to
Which
get with
page is
that.
that?
Page 34. Page 30, I'm sorry. I'm just curious as to what other and other parish-wide services may be.
He's referring to there's a property tax pie chart that's provided that shows all the entities in the parish, not just the police jury, where the property tax goes. And again, in case you don't have it in front of you, it shows the police jury's funds, the school board gets property taxes, and a lot of these special service districts, that's how they're funded. Other there's an other parish-wide services and other. I don't know which one you're
Both.
asking about. Both.
I mean, if you're going to give money to other, what is other?
Well, we just, at some point, the categories are too small, so we lumped them. Chenault, for example, gets property tax. Regional Airport, which is a very small one, but they get property tax. And so we lump those in there. I'm trying to remember. Tammy, you
Ms.
can
Buffalo?
maybe fill in.
Oh,
the blank.
that's okay. You don't have
No,
to
it's,
name them
it's,
one for
it's a
one.
good
That's
question.
fine.
I think
West Cal Hospital.
West Cal, okay.
The assessor gets some.
Okay.
The port.
Ms. Buffkin, could you speak in the microphone a little bit better?
Yes.
All right. Could you go over that again?
Okay. West Cal Hospital. The port. The assessor. And then the airports, like Brian said.
And the difference between other parish-wide and other, some of these are, like West Cal, are not parish-wide, so we put them under other. That's the only reason.
Mr.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. Thank you for that. Any of this other does not go with their sheriff's department other than their tax.
No, the sheriff actually has its own
Right.
wedge that's shown. Now the sheriff also gets sales tax,
Correct.
but this is just a property
Correct.
tax slide.
Correct. All right. All right, I'd like to thank y'all. This year's book is very much more user-friendly. I'd like to thank every department for coming in 10% under last year. We're very pleased with it. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Parham. Do the other speakers still want to speak? Questions been answered? Mr. Phillips, Mr. Stebbins, either one of y'all want to speak? Good, thank you. Any other discussion by the jury or any other police jurors? And let's move to item 4.
Now I'll make the motion.
Item 4 is consideration of recommending approval of the parish budget for fiscal year 2011. Police jury regular meeting on December 2010-16. I have a motion by Ms. Trimmie, need a second? I have a second by Mr. Anderpont. Is there any discussion on item 4? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Any other matters for consideration? Need a motion to adjourn. So moved. Motion by Dr. Mackey, second by Mr. Anderpont. We stand adjourned.
Ten has now been called to order. We will have the invocation by Mr. Scott, which will follow immediately with the pledge. Please stand.
Father God, we thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for what a beautiful day you've given us. We thank you for every blessing that you've bestowed up on us. We thank you for our families. We thank you for this great parish, this great state, and what a great nation we live in. And your word says that if your people who are called by your name will humble themselves and pray, Lord, that you would heal our land. And right now, Father, as a group of men and women that are called by your name, we just pray out that you touch our land, that in our finances, that in our health, that in all the things that we count on each and every day to raise our family and to raise up a government, Father, that we do it all in the name of Jesus. We ask that you would just bless it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Mr. Anderpont?
Here.
Mr. Brame?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Farnham?
Here.
Mrs. Griffin?
Present.
Mr. Hassan?
Here.
Mr. Landry?
Here.
Dr. Mackey?
Present.
Mr. McMillan?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Spell?
Here.
Mr. Stelly?
Here.
Mr. Sias?
Present.
And Mrs. Trimmie is present also. President Guidry.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We want to again welcome everybody for being here tonight. And we have a full house tonight, so if everybody can get inside and get a seat, and we'd ask that if there's anybody that has a cell phone or a pager, we would ask that you would put that device to silence so that we can conduct our meeting in an orderly fashion. And we would also ask that if there's anyone that want to speak on any of the items that we have on the agenda tonight, we'd ask that you would fill out one of the blue cards that's in the rear of the room. Please bring that card to the front to Ms. Jessica, and we'll make sure that we'll have you on that item. And with that being said, we'll proceed. Item number 5, take appropriate actions on applications for liquor and beer permits. Mr. Vickers.
Mr. President, we have 2 applications pending. We recommend they be approved.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Stelly and a second by Ms. Griffin. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 5 passes. Item number 6, consideration approval of payments
Move
of
on
all
to 6.
current invoices. I have a motion by Mr. Andrew Point and a second by Dr. Mackey. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 6 passes. Item number 7, presentation of certificates to the coaches and players of the 2010 Lake Charles Star football team in recognition of their undefeated season and winning the Lake Charles City Championship and the 2010 Super Bowl Championship in the 11 and 12-year-old division. At this time, I would ask that Coach Vincent please come to the podium. This is a real honor for me to have these young men here tonight because I can remember back when it was only a few years ago when I was those guys' size and age and everything. You guys didn't catch that one, did you? But I want to just say something to those young men that are there tonight. Guys, let me tell you something. This is the starting point of the type of young men that you're going to be in life. Going undefeated, guys, that takes a lot of discipline, and it takes a lot of obedience to what your coaches have in store for you each and every day at practice. And what I want to say here tonight to you all, stay encouraged. Make sure you get your schoolwork. Make sure you listen to what mom and dad says, and there's going to be a lot of great things going to happen for each and every one of you in your life. So I just want to encourage each and every one of you, and we've got some certificates for all of you guys tonight because we feel that you guys just did an outstanding job in representing the city of Lake Charles and Calcasieu Parish. So again, I want to say from all of us here on the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury, we applaud the effort that you guys gave this year. And let's give them all a big round of applause, guys. I have a few certificates I want to read, and they all read the same, but I want to just read the very first one. It says, Certificate of Recognition presented by the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury on this day, 2nd day of December 2010, to Coach Vincent Wilson, assistant coach of the Lake Charles Stars 11-12-year-old football team for having a successful season by winning the Lake Charles City Championship and becoming the 2010 Super Bowl champs. Congratulations on your accomplishments and a job well done. And each and every one of you guys will receive one of these tonight. And I want to go ahead and give Coach his tonight. And I just want to say to you all, Coach, stay encouraged because you know what? You guys have got a big task on your hand. But you know what? When you can have young men stay that focused and that disciplined at that age, I applaud you guys for what you're doing. Congratulations. Call up his players, and we're going to have them line up here in the front. We're going to get a picture of you guys, okay? Call them out.
Ralph Anderson. Nicholas Bowie. Jordan Clark. Traylon Darby. Good job. Cameron Davis. Marshall Doucette.
Congratulations.
Jeffrey Fenner. Clarence Floyd.
He looks like a run. Stephen Ridley.
Dre Guillory. Kilo Higgins.
So you put the other sticker back on your truck or what? There were shirt, change shirts, and sticker was
Abernathy LaFleur.
Let me just say something about this young man here that was brought to my attention. This was the MVP of the entire Super Bowl. So let's give him a big round of applause.
Richard. Trayvon Richard. Jacoby Taylor. Raylan Victor. Andre Willer. Vincent Wilson II. Walter Weathers.
A couple of y'all want to come in the front?
Coach Arthur, I'm going to have you just comment on a couple of these young guys for us here today, if you don't mind. Just a few comments.
Let's see, what should I say? Well, it was a long time coming. I mean, we came from a long way, you know, starting way in the summertime through the heat and the mosquitoes, the long days. In the beginning, I also got out there and, you know, ran drills with the kids myself, you know, but as I realized I was a little bit too far gone for that. But it's a wonderful group of young men, you know. Everything has, you know, problems sometimes amongst, you know, different characters and different personalities, but they bonded together, and, you know, you see the finished product at the end of the season, a championship season plus undefeated season. So my heart goes out to them. Congratulations. We have a couple 10-year-olds that played on 11, 12-year-old level. You know, not only did they play, some of them started. So, you know, that's a real good thing to see a 10-year-old playing on 11, 12-year-old level, you know. So congratulations, Stars. The ones that will be back, we'll be ready for y'all next year. And the ones that are going on, you know, good luck. And just have a prosperous football career, even if you don't play football when you get farther in, you know, in school and high school, whatever. Just, you know, remember life and, you know, get your good education, and you can go to school and, you know, achieve.
Coach Vince, did you want to say a few words?
I got one thing to say. Remember, fellas, schoolwork come first, everything else come later. Y'all keep that attitude. Y'all going to make it a long way in life. Thank y'all.
Guys, let's give them another big round of applause. Thank you, guys. Great job, Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Great job, guys.
Congratulations, guys.
Yeah, stay here for the rest of stay here for the rest of the meeting. Ms. Griffin.
I would ask that all the jurors please return to your seats. I would ask that all the jurors please return to your seats. Great job, guys, and keep up the good work. Mr. Kevin's watching you guys now.
Yeah. I'll double check.
That's why I get on that spinning.
Moving on to item number 8, presentation by representatives of the National Hurricane Museum and Science Center Board of Directors. Mr. McMurray is the liaison for the parish for that board. Mr. McMurray, did you fill out a blue card before coming up, sir?
No, I didn't, Mr. President.
More good to have you, and thanks for being here. We look forward to hearing from you, Mark.
Mark McMurray, 122 Vine. It's a pleasure to be here. I thank you for the opportunity for us to share some information with you. As you had these young men up here a while ago and sitting through the budget sessions a while ago and listening to Coyote talk, I just had to think that being able to honor young people like that in the community that do what they do has to be one of the more fun parts of your job amidst the budgets and coyotes and some of the other things you have to deal with. I was going to come up here and ask Brian to get out of my chair, but I think he's doing a job better than I did, so he probably ought to stay right where he is. We do appreciate very much. I'm speaking on behalf of all the board members of the National Hurricane Museum and Science Center. Appreciate the opportunity to make a presentation to you tonight. Grace Stream, who is our chairman, is actually going to make the presentation. It's one similar to what was made before the City Council at the Civic Center several weeks ago. As you probably know, we are working with the City Council to try to secure a space on the lakefront for the museum. It's just been a great pleasure for us. In fact, just say we've had great good fortune to be able to work with some of the world-class architects, engineers, planners, museum specialists, fundraisers that have been a part of some of the most major projects, museums across the world, not only just in this country, but across the world. They are just world-class people, and I think that with what you'll see tonight and what has been passed out to you, you can see that we're talking about some pretty special stuff here, and I appreciate the opportunity to represent you on that board. And I'm not going to take any more of your time. I'm going to ask Gray if he would come forward and make the presentation to you, and then we will be happy to try to answer any questions you have after the presentation. Thank you.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Gray Stream, 709 Shell Beach, Lake Charles. I'm going to try and use this lapel mic. I don't know if I need to, first of all, turn it on, but I'm sure I'll step away from this mic to try and avoid any feedback. Does that work? Mike? Oh, nice. Thank you. Thank you, George, for the opportunity to present this tonight. As Mark said, we did have the opportunity, after really keeping this project somewhat under wraps for a while as far as the details, had the opportunity to unveil it a few weeks ago. And but of course, I've been eager to take the opportunity to present directly to the Calcasieu Parish jury and bring everyone up to speed on what's been worked on. It's a very exciting project. This jury, although this is the first public opportunity to present to the jury has been very supportive and helpful already, much more than you know, simply by your appointment of Mark McMurray to the board. I'm sure you figured that he had a little too much time on his hands as a retiree and wanted to keep him busy with something, and you picked an amazing project to get him involved in, and he's someone of his experience is just a great addition to the board. So without too much further ado, I want to try and get us started on the project. Hopefully everybody can see the screens. I'm actually kind of a young guy, but I have really bad eyesight, so I'll cheat a little bit on this computer screen. The board of directors, as you see, myself, Captain Sammy Falk, Mark's our secretary, Claude Leach, Monty Hurley, Fran Sanchez, Jennifer Tomplay. A couple of years ago, when the America's Wetland Discovery Center Board, which was sort of born out of a vision of the city of Lake Charles and a grant that they got from NOAA several years ago, and the Southwest Louisiana Convention and Visitors Bureau that had been working with the parish and within the Bureau and with local volunteers to put the Hurricane Museum together. When they merged, maybe it was a year and a half ago, when that merger occurred, we decided to reconstruct the board, and it was very important to us that the police jury have a representative elected to that board, and Hal was president at the time and was very helpful in that regard. We've got a great board of local citizens who are really just frankly trying to bring an amazing project to the region. Special thanks to a lot of different groups. Everybody here has contributed amazingly. The Creole Nature Trail and the CVB have obtained all these federal grant dollars that we as a parish and city are getting to benefit from. As you'll see as we go into this list of world-class professionals that Mark referred to, their experience is really impressive, and the fact that we were able to get them has a lot to do with the fact that we had federal support paying for their kind of level of expertise. The Old Wetlands Center Board, Creole Nature Trail, Lake Charles, basically just continuing, just trying to show that there's been a lot of input and support from different agencies around the state and the region, working with different agencies to get their input. I think there's a real understanding across a lot of different sets of individuals and stakeholders that this could be something really huge, not just for the region, but of course there's a national message here that we kind of want to use our regional position to communicate to the world. The Smith Group is the design group behind what you're going to see tonight. They have 11 offices across the country. They've worked on the Native American History Museum for the Smithsonian, the African American History Museum for the Smithsonian, a lot of university projects, large institutional projects, the Milwaukee Lakefront Park, which I'll show a picture of in a minute, some various things. Just really great experience, a great group to work with. The Eisterholt and Associates bunch, their exhibit design group, they've worked on little projects like Jurassic Park, Universal Studios, again, Smithsonian, Normandy Visitor Center, I mean, just international type projects. And Cora Creative is also a group of Smithsonian alums. Robert Sullivan was a development director for the Smithsonian. So his contacts and his understanding, as well as his associate Maria Elena, their understanding of the industry and kind of a nationwide perspective, and their contacts have just been an invaluable resource for us as a region to get to tap into. So just to talk for a minute about the potential impact and the importance of cultural facilities to a region. And, it's funny, when I unveiled this a few weeks ago, I think I saw somebody kind of roll their eyes when they saw the Sydney Opera House on there. But I kind of saw them nodding their head later in the presentation when they came to understand the real similarity and the real crux of the importance of what that Opera House means to that area and that region. Because if I asked probably anybody in this room what the most important export of Sydney was, or who the most important person from Sydney was, or the largest employer, I mean, it basically asked just even if I asked what's the first thing that you thought of when I asked you about Sydney, you'd probably say the Sydney Opera House. Nobody could probably answer any of those other questions, but if I said Sydney, they would think Sydney Opera House. So it's amazing a structure has come to identify an entire city, and in a lot of ways, probably an entire continent to us, unless you spend a lot of time there. So why did that happen? I mean, it's just a place where things happen. Surely it can look any way, and you could put it anywhere. They strategically located it, and they built it in a way where the form of the building inspired people. It serves as an icon, and it made it more important than a building. It made it an identity for that city and that region. Bilbao, Spain, similar. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, very interesting story. They've seen the impact to their region increase by 25 or 33%. I can't remember if it was a third or a fourth, but have seen a significant impact economically, visitor-wise, inquiry-wise to their Visitors Bureau. Just a tremendous amount of interest in the downtown because of the Milwaukee Art Museum that was built down there. They decided, again, not to they decided to sort of reconceptualize what a museum could be, so to speak, in that the structure could be an icon, and it really connects them to their waterfront there, to the lake, and sets an identity for the downtown. Chattanooga Aquarium, another great example. Probably folks on this jury may be aware, just because it's a great case study, just a great American case study. It's been extremely successful and has sort of recharacterized the city of Chattanooga. Another city that most people probably don't think of as their, kind of a top 10 city. I mean, it's a city and it's a region very similar to the city of Lake Charles and this region here. It's a drive-through community. An interstate goes through. It's got there's great visual opportunities and there's great opportunity to capture visitors, but there just wasn't an identity there, and there wasn't a reason for folks for anything for them to latch onto. Very realistic economic impacts, very measurable, very impressive. Basically, they've created a waterfront around this project. So the vision of this organization. Mission was, this facility is dedicated, it's truly an educational facility, and the intent is to educate folks, all ages, all walks of life, using this very compelling story of hurricanes. You know, people around the country and around the world know our region now because of what they've seen on the cover of Time and on CNN. I mean, they relate our region to the story of our hurricanes that we've experienced here historically. And to them, it's a powerful message. And there's an awful lot for them to learn within that message, whether it's sociological, scientific, prediction, whether it's, National Geographic ran a cover story in 2005, right when Katrina and Rita hit, about our Louisiana wetlands and what the impact of hurricanes would be if those wetlands weren't protected. There is an internationally compelling story to be told based on things that are regionally and locally significant to us. Some of the vision of the facility: nationally recognized education center, creative educational model, math, ecology, history, geography. There are just a rich canvas to be utilized from an educational standpoint. So why here? You know, when we talk about the Sydney Opera House, it's funny because why we do it, I don't know, but sometimes we don't think that highly of ourselves. We think, well, that could never happen here. And the fact is, it can happen here. The reason why the opportunity has presented itself is a group of local visionaries that are committed to it. The Convention and Visitors Bureau here and the Creole Nature Trail are to be commended for all the work that they've done to obtain these grant dollars, to get these world-class professionals focused on our region, and to do the market studies, to do the marketing studies, and to get the analysis done to understand, could a project like this happen here? And if so, what would it take to make it happen? It's appropriate for this region, and it's a wonderful opportunity for us, again, to tell a national story with a regional significance and importance and context. So all this research, as I mentioned earlier, Robert Sullivan, Core Creative, wonderful guy. He's one of these guys that he makes me smile with his negativity. Every time he, pops a bubble or shoots a hole in something, you think, I like this guy, I can believe him. No, that'll never work. You know, he's been there, he's done it, he's tried it, he's raised billions of dollars, and he's been rejected thousands of times. And he says, I love rejection because I love the fact that, I've got to keep asking and working on these different projects and doing what I can. Brings an amazing contextual relationship, and they have so much data and research at their fingertips. Hundreds of facilities across the country that they can then pull cross-sections of sizes of geographic demographics, ages, studies, economics, and really whittle that down into usable data and good information. And then they can put that within basic certain bandwidths to understand what's acceptable, what's feasible, what will work. The only bad part is when Mr. Negativity came back and said it's going to work, because then I thought, oh, great, we were all going to get to sleep a little more, see our families a little more, but it works. Robert Sullivan, Core Creative, our group of researchers, really, this book right here is hundreds of pages, and it's a summary of the data and information that was put together. It's really gratifying to see the objective, structured research that went into that. What we saw is that there's a prediction of 180 to 220,000 members. What they did not include in there was some basic analysis that they took from LaBerge visitors. That wasn't included. And they didn't include people that way they just pulled off I-10. Earned revenue of $1.5 million a year. Total full-time employment of 46 folks. Lake Charles regional economic impact, 710 construction jobs. You can read this, obviously. 12 million in payroll, 58 million in state construction expenditures. And you come down at the bottom when you take direct and secondary expenditures, $55 million in total economic impact annually. Now, again, we see feasibility studies all the time, and I said that I like a negative guy, a guy that wants to poke holes in things and not tell me why things will work, but why they won't work. And I'm very gratified by and impressed with all of the research that went into this to really hold it to a high standard with all the assumptions and really come out realizing that we can feel very good about ourselves and the sustainability of a world-class project in this region. This is basically what we anticipate over the next 24 to 48 months as a board raising. It's really interesting. I got an email 2 nights ago from a good friend. His family has the largest family-owned construction company in the country. He's a Harvard Business School graduate. He saw this presentation, and he said, one of my best friends from Harvard Business School sits on the board at the Weather Channel. Have you talked to them yet? They're extremely philanthropic. They would love this. And I said, well, it's funny you mentioned that. Weather Channel's on the, that bunch is on the short list of the big guys we need to talk to. Basically how it works is once we get a location approved by the city, which, as Mark mentioned, we're negotiating that with them now, we get started on an initial campaign. We'll raise our seed money in the next few months to basically fund a campaign. And that money doesn't go towards the facility. It purely goes towards effort, and it's like angel money. It's people that say, I have no idea if this is ever going to go anywhere, but I want to make sure you've got a budget because you're going to need a budget to raise $65 million. So we'll raise that in the next few months, and then there's a quiet period. We'll work with Sully, Robert Sullivan, and our fundraising guys. We'll be tapping into contacts and various entities around the country, getting our lead donors. These take 12 months to a year and a half to really firm up these big contributions, as well as continuing to work with our federal representatives, because as you said, as you saw, there's some federal agency interest in this, which opens the door for that. High net worth individuals, and well, again, I would stress that this is taken from basically industry averages. You'll see some bands in here, and even these banded numbers can be off. Various contributions that can come in from one source or another can sort of throw these off. But this is sort of what industry average looks like. So, conclusions, it works, it's wonderful. That's the conclusion, it's wonderful. So the concept. This is kind of where the presentation gets fun. The architectural inspiration for this building is obviously draws from hurricanes, from storm surge, from the chaos involved. And, you know, as we showed earlier, there's something really powerful and evocative when you decide that you can take something that has a function and symbolize it with its form. That takes a building and makes it an icon. It makes it a symbol that a region can enjoy and benefit from. Some early sketches as the creative work begins. The site, just to show some traffic flow here, we really tried to tie into a lot of the work that's been done. There's been lakefront enhancement done here. We haven't wanted to take away from that. We've wanted to enhance it with lake viewing areas on the lake side, landscaping enhancements on the city side, basically trying to keep pedestrian flow easy for everyone and enhance that experience and work off of what's there. Some schematic, exhibit tree schematic and exhibit tree layout. Okay, so we have a little fly-through video on the exhibits. It's quick, so I'll try to keep up. Quick once it gets started, that is. When you come into the main part of the facility, and it's not that jumbled, by the way, that's just to show all these different sort of facets in one area. There, as we said earlier, there are so many areas that provide this rich opportunity to talk about. It's not just about, you know, how does a hurricane form, what's the science behind it. There is a tremendous amount of discovery that's happened over centuries trying to explain these phenomena and how they've impacted cities and cultures along the way. There's predictive technologies that have been created. There's a lot on the weather and meteorological side of this. There are a lot of really fun and interesting opportunities to tap into. A lot of physics, a lot of math, all in actually very engaging, fun ways that people can tap into. There are, you know, it's a very impactful, the topic, I mean, it can really hit hard. And there's some of the, did I break your computer, Joe? Uh-oh. Maybe I did break it. Well, I get to talk about exhibits for a little longer then, while it runs back through this little video. One of the things that it was about to go into as well is that something that's near and dear to my heart, and you know, it's all important, but one of the great regional messages that we have an opportunity to talk about here and take out to the rest of the world is our natural resources in this region, our coastal wetlands, and you know, an important component of this story is a regional one. We wrap it in this national message. And, but I think that if we didn't use this podium to project out to the world, that we'd be selling ourselves short. Also, by the way, when we talk to, you know, sort of very discreetly, when we talk to industry people that are maybe big oil companies or, you know, impactors along the Gulf region, that story is one that really grabs them, that they say, I want to be a part of telling that story. You know, maybe the Weather Channel is interested in the meteorological side and they want a place where when hurricane season is starting they can broadcast from, but you know, we want to be a part of that wetland story, that coastal story that's so important to Louisiana. So that's a major exhibitory component of this as well. Some of it is actually outside, publicly accessible. There's no, you know, entry. Actually, a lot of this building is, as I'll show in the fly-through. Now what's happening, Joe? Here we go. So the exhibitory one didn't work. Hopefully this one won't freeze up. We're coming off 210 there along the lake. Kind of flew up and came out. This is all very stylized, but some imagery will come on top of it to give a little more realistic look and feel. The facility is a Category 5 hurricane-rated facility. you'll notice that these waves that crash over it are these steel mesh screens. They actually allow you to see out of them, and they provide this glistening effect like water. There's actually a steel treatment on the side of the building, a curvature as well, that does the same thing. It's a really dramatic effect. It's obviously it's a very eye-catching building, and it captures the imagination. Ties in to the lakefront on this side. We've landscaping enhancements, the waves crashing over, really neat lighting treatments, and a public lobby where people come in and can see out to the lakefront, can access the lakefront publicly. It's glass from one side to the other. Again, it's all Category 5 rated. People walking along the lake can actually, that cafe opens out onto that lakeside, an actual lakeside cafe right there with seating, with these screens protecting people from the heat and sun. Really just a facility that provides a lot on a lot of different levels, whether it's cultural, whether it's iconic, whether it's branding, whether it's something that grabs the attention of an international design magazine, whether it's something that grabs the attention of that guy that never stops when he drives through Lake Charles coming over the bridge, and he wants to actually stop on his way from Houston to New Orleans, or wants to stop because his kids are in the back seat telling him there's that really neat building that we want to stop and see. As you can see, lake viewing areas on the lakeside, boat access. Actually, one of the components that you would have gotten to see in the exhibit you slides is a boat that takes people out into the wetlands where they can, kind of have an interpretive guide and see all that. So I've talked nonstop for the last several minutes. It's been, as I said, it's been a real honor to get to work on this. I was conned into getting involved several years ago with the Wetland Center project, and the merger of these two facilities created a great opportunity that, as just a public citizen and speaking for the other members of the board, I mean, we just feel really honored to have the opportunity to be a part of this and to try and move it forward for the region. We really, at this point, want to provide information to this police jury, want this jury to be interested, curious, engaged in a project that could obviously have significant impact for the parish. And, at this point, we've got a lot of work to do, and there's an opportunity to provide progress reports along the way, and any engagement that this jury wants. We would love to have enthusiastic support and champions at all levels. So are there any questions that jurors have, or of course I'm available?
Yes, we do have some questions, Mr. Gray. Ms. Trimming.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I blew through that so quickly. I don't want to take too much of your time.
Great. Thank you so much for that presentation. I am blown away. I'll be truthful with you. With the, I mean, this could be anywhere in the world, but to be here and as the liaison to the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and also the Creole Nature Trail Scenic Byway, and for so many years since 1992, when they told me about this it's been several years ago. I don't know how long ago that the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Creole Nature Trail has been working on this, but it's been several years. And at that point, it was a real dream. And to see a dream that started in a very small embryo stage, and Sammy Falk, I see you're here tonight, and Shelley and Monty. They've all been on the ground floor. But to see the people of Southwest Louisiana, like yourself and like Mark, who's been a part of this parish for over 32, 34 years, that he worked here and now is giving his experience back to Southwest Louisiana and to Calcasieu Parish. This really blows me away. I mean, when I first saw it, I thought, what is this? But when you start explaining that that's the waves and how it's constructed to actually be in a storm, to actually be in the eye of the storm, it rocks. And I'll be more than happy to escort you anywhere you need to go and be one of your spokesmen to be able to raise the funds to be able to have this on our shores here in Calcasieu Parish. And thank you for all the hard work, and it was worth the wait. And thank you for everyone that has done this. And I think that each one of us here tonight, I don't know how you feel, but it rocks. Now I'm telling you, it's pretty amazing. So thank you, and thank you for coming and making this presentation, and thank you to Monty and Shelley and Captain Falk, Captain Sammy for really getting in on this. And when they showed me Hurricane Museum, I thought, it didn't seem too exciting, but it really is exciting. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for everything you've done, Ms. Trim, and you're right. They did take it from a dream. The Creole Nature Trail folks, Monty, Sammy, Shelley, and others involved, they did take it from a dream. And actually, a few years ago, when I was first introduced to it, it didn't resonate with me that much. What you have now is that dream backed by, and it was nice to get the federal dollars to be able to do this, all this research, planning, validation, and a roadmap forward. So now there are boxes to be checked. And if you get to a certain point, it's sort of it's a sliding scale, and the boxes, can get tougher at some point. And if you get to a point you can't check a box, well, we may find it's an insurmountable challenge. I don't know. But you're not going in a direction without guidance. There is a very clear direction at this point with very clear timelines. So it's not a dream anymore, it's a plan. And that group deserves a lot of credit, and all that you've done and this jury has done to support that group. I know helped them get there. And when we do talk to folks, whether it's corporate entities or government agencies or a major association in D.C., they want to know that the federal representatives, if there is an association, are going to support something like this because their industry is very involved in it. They interact with federal representatives, okay? And they say, well, does Senator so-and-so, are they engaged in this? And Senator so-and-so wants to know, well, what's the jury think and what's the council think? So there are great opportunities at every level for there to be, cheerleaders and support, and just for there to be a positive environment to help ensure success. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg.
We have a few more comments, Mr. Gray. Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to thank you for your service to the board as well as the other board members. And I would like to say this is a much better fit, in my opinion, than some of the other projects that I've seen in the newspaper. I know this body is not the one that's going to actually make the final decision, but I mean, to me, that's not much of a decision to be made. This is head and shoulders above anything else that I've seen. And Mr. Beam, would it be appropriate for us to possibly do a resolution of support, or I don't know if that would help things, or?
I would ask Gray and Mark at this point, if this is more informational at this time, which is what I understand, and at the appropriate time, they may ask or will ask for some support in different ways. So I guess I would defer that to both of these gentlemen.
Yeah, Mr. Landy, I really appreciate that sentiment, and we would be overjoyed to have such a resolution. I was, as Brian said, not expecting that tonight. We can have discussions to try and move that forward on an official basis and just get a resolution of support, and would love to do that. Tonight, really wanted to take the opportunity directly to this jury to, as an audience, we don't have to read about it in the paper, but besides the unveiling, this is the first meeting that we've had as a group of presentation, and I just really wanted to get this jury informed and engaged. So, but would love that going forward.
Whenever you're ready for it,
Thank you.
just ask.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you. Ray, I'm excited about this. This would really put us on a national map as far as having something like this in southwest Louisiana. It'd be good for all the communities around here and our state as a whole right there on I-10. Are there other cities in the running at this point in time on a project of this magnitude?
You know, there are cities all over the country that, you know, bend over backwards to try and make stuff like this happen. This project is happening because, as Ms. Trimmy mentioned, there's a group of local citizens that have done a lot of work, and they've been creative. They've been able to leverage a lot of dollars from elsewhere, and the whole idea was, you know, to help their home region. So this group has only, you know, there's a loyalty to this facility and the concept, but truly it's meant to be an enhancement for this region. If it absolutely couldn't be here, you know, in some of the early fundraising fundamental feasibility work, the interviews that Robert Sullivan, for instance, did with some of the high net worth contacts that he has in the Houston area, the New Orleans area, folks that are major contributors either to Smithsonian or other organizations he's been involved in. You know, quite honestly, they said, oh, we love it. If it were in my city, you know, I would do it. So, and he basically said, well, I could get it built. You know, I talked to enough people in Houston that said they would write the check. But that's theirs. They can do that heavy lifting at some point. But to answer your question, sure, there are cities always competing to do stuff like this, and there's a lot of great projects out there in the country. This project is meant to be here.
Financially, the initial seed money that you would need, and when are you going to need that seed money?
What I've proposed, what we have as a board have proposed, is you know, in giving the city progress updates along the way in order to get the option on the piece of property there on the lake and show them that forward progress. We've basically committed to give them a progress update at 6 months and show that we would have a fully raised you know, budget at that time to be able to move forward. And I mean,
the initial budget? Any idea on the initial budget that you'd need to?
The initial budget is between $250 and $350, and that's what we'll use. And you know, it could be $350 to $400, but I mean that's typically that's what the budget will be for the next few years of getting this money raised, and that's, you know, board development, and it's, you know, it's the marketing, and it's having the right professional on staff. We'll have to have a full-time professional, and, you know, basically we anticipate that when I can get a solid enough commitment on the location, that you know, unfortunately as chairman, this is kind of how it goes. You have to be the one to go sit down with some folks. And I'll go sit down with some folks, and we'll try and raise that initial seed money, and in 6 months I very fully intend to present the progress update that we have that budget raised.
And that could come back to Mr. Landry, a resolution maybe to the city council saying that we like this idea might be something that would be a help. Just throwing that out. We could discuss that later. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. This time I call on Mr. McMurray.
I just wanted to be a little less diplomatic than Gray was in answer to your first question. I think there are cities from Miami to Brownsville that would love to have the research and data that's been paid for, that's been done here, to be able to have a museum like this there. So I think we're very fortunate to be in the lead on that and be ahead of the game.
And back to you with your experience in the parish, would a resolution to the city help us any at all on y'all's committee behalf?
Well, how's your relationship with the city council right now?
Very good. Very good.
I didn't mean Westlake.
I guess they get the impression.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about Westlake. I don't know. I think both Brian and Gray's points are well taken. I mean, we're very early in this process, and you know, I kind of thought they were going to take something up and discuss that last night, but I didn't see that. Do you know?
I didn't inform my board very well, but I talked to the city council member, which is John Ivey, that actually put that on the agenda a few weeks ago, and I actually started talking with some of the other parties that are interested in lakefront tracks, and I'm trying to make it easy on the city council because they think they have to make a decision about mutually exclusive things. And, they were also confused about some facts. So we just deferred it for a couple weeks. And I think what, I want to make sure everybody's properly informed, and they were, it was a friendly thing to do. It was supportive, and it makes sure that when they make a decision in a couple weeks that they're very well informed. So,
just as a specific attempt at your question, I don't think a general resolution supporting this concept and the location of this in Southwest Louisiana would be hurtful in any way, shape, or form right now. We might want to come back for more specific support resolution at a later date, but I don't see a general resolution of support for the concept being damaging at all right now, if y'all are inclined to do that.
I have one other question. I'll let Mr. Landry make that motion here in a moment if he still wants to go with his resolution. Timeline-wise, if we got the property, if funding was rolling, what are we looking at a shovel-ready project? When will we be turning dirt on this?
So what I just presented to the city, basically, the National Hurricane Museum and Science Center has a cooperative endeavor agreement with the city of Lake Charles, and actually has performed on all the requirements of that cooperative endeavor agreement. And what it says is that, having performed at this point, can enter into negotiations with the city of Lake Charles to lease a tract. And that tract is actually Tract 2, which is not exactly where we are, which is called Tract 1D. So we suggested actually some amendments to that. First of all, saying, might as well just make it an option. We want the firm commitment as long as that can move into a lease. We don't need to get into a lease right now. The other thing is moving it to Tract 1D. So in that letter, basically spelling out this timeline, 6 months to present, to come back and say, we've got the budget raised to be able to do this. The first 24 months, so a 24-month period from theoretically now, come back and say 50 to 60% of those funds are raised and committed. Within another 18 to 24 months after that, so theoretically 4 years from now, ready to lease and begin moving the construction process forward. And it probably would take an 18-month time frame after that. I actually think and hope that those are conservative estimates of how long it would take us to reach those accomplishments. But I definitely will take the advice of our advisors who suggest managing those kind of expectations and not being overly aggressive, just given the basic environment out there and sort of a macroeconomic standpoint. But, this group is highly motivated to do something in a set period of time. And as heartbreaking as it would be to get 80% of the way there, if you put a threshold at 85 at a specific period of time and you get to 80, it's a really difficult decision, but I think that you have to have the fortitude to say, we're going to call up everybody that made their commitments and, say we're willing to not move forward. Or maybe at that time you're close enough and something's going to happen, you can move it forward and get it to completion. But this is a group that's willing and, in fact, demands to make that difficult decision at some time. So that's kind of the timeline, if I answered your timeline questions. And that timeline is meant to be quite distinct insofar as those are our goals, when we want to achieve them, and if we don't, it can't be dragged out for forever. You need to basically say, hey, we're getting started, or we didn't quite get there, and it was a great dream.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Millen. Mr. Brame.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, great. Thanks for the presentation. I appreciate it. And you answered my question probably 2 or 3 times, but the location, is it something that y'all are in negotiations with now to secure the location, or do you foresee any problems with the location? Is I guess my question.
I would hate to be struck by lightning by answering one way or another, but there was a tremendous, as you can see, the way that facility is built, it really is one with the earth and with the water right there. I mean, and I don't want to sound too hokey, but the symbolism is that way for a reason. And it's an amazingly perfect spot for it in the vantage point that it offers the I-10 bridge and some other things. So where we are on that is that last night, the council had put on the agenda a few weeks ago after the presentation made to them to move forward with the framework for optioning that tract to the National Hurricane Museum and Science Center. As Mr. Landry expressed, there are other groups that have expressed interest in doing things at Point Sloan Lakefront. One in particular has expressed an interest in all of that area. I mean, from Track 1D and 2 and Veterans Memorial Park and the Bell property and everything. So, so nothing is set in stone tonight, but with, by the next council meeting, it's my understanding that it will be put back on the agenda, and we do hope that there will be some resolution at that time to be able to move forward with optioning that piece from the city of Lake Charles.
Okay. Yeah, and I'd like to see that happen too. Just what if, that property is not available? Where will it go? Or do you have any plan B for the property?
Well, if it doesn't go there, I think that probably the board of the Science Center would need to get together and kind of figure that out. I mean, there were some different tracks considered, and they were all analyzed by the design groups and engineering and architectural guys, and they literally they had these computer models that showed all these different perspectives of the tracks from the different views, and then figured out what the impact would be to, traffic patterns this way or that way, and this was just an ideal track. And it's one of those things, there was a question as well, could you make it smaller if you didn't raise all the money? And actually, you couldn't, unfortunately. If you only raised half the money, first of all, you'd have to spend a lot of new money redesigning something smaller. But second of all, you wouldn't be able to actually create enough exhibit space to make it sustainable. So you actually get to a tipping off point economically and from a feasibility perspective. So it's a shame, but no. I mean, there's kind of like, it's sort of a binomial function. It's kind of it can work or it can't. And, I think at that point, there's not an option B on property at this point.
Good luck on securing the land.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Breen. Gray, we have one more speaker, Mr. Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Stream. I was able to be at the actual unveiling when you did it for the city and stuff, and I was very impressed. Lots of good questions. A lot of people had a lot of, information. You got to spend a little more time than you did here with the presentation. I would like to, Mr. Landry makes that motion, I would like to add in that motion that location, without a doubt, would need to be where this museum sits. So I would recommend that we actually put in there that we support that location, because looking at this building as you come down the top side of I-10 is where you see it's magnificent. You don't see it if you move it on the old Harrah's site. You don't see it if you move it on the other side of the Civic Center. Without a doubt, in my personal opinion, that spot is ideal. When you look at this kind of development, is what a lot of people would call it, I would call it more of an experience for this parish and for this Southwest Louisiana. And you mentioned the word fortitude a while ago, and how long is it going to take was the question how asked. I think when people get on board with vision, I think vision and it's cast the correct way. You don't have to ask, what are we going to do when we're going to do it? People just get on board because they realize that what we're going to be able to have here is something that the world can come to, and that people can come for education, they can come for an experience. And so it really becomes more of an infrastructure that we build here with this museum, which is going to create development that's going to help the city, it's going to help the parish, it'll help this whole region. So I support it 100%. I appreciate you coming back again. I got to flip through the book and actually read into it a little bit. I had to pull some pretty high strings in your organization to be able to sit down with that book. But, it was tough, but you didn't want to give it up. But actually,
okay, we did bring a couple more, Mr. Scott.
That's the book. I actually got to spend some time in that book. And so I appreciate all the hard work y'all put into it, and I support it 110% at that location. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Before I call on Mr. Landry, Mr. McMurray, did you want to have any closing comments?
All I want to say is that we have a couple of books we're going to leave with Brian here, and there's a couple more coming. What I was going to ask, if Brian, if you would contact the library system and place one of the, have them place one at both Sulphur Regional and the Central Library, so people could, and then make sure that that is well known. We'll try to do what we can to make sure that from an advertisement point of view, that it's there for people to review, so the public will have full access to it. And thank you all for your time tonight.
Sorry, it's on the website too.
President, I had a question for Gray. Is the National Hurricane Museum and Science Center proprietary? If Miami or New Orleans or Houston decided they wanted to do it, could they use that name?
Actually, it is a trademark name. And Shelley Johnson and the Convention Visitors Bureau, and they've worked very hard to make that be the case.
That's good.
Thank you, Mr. Beam. Mr. Landry, this time, did you want to restate that motion?
Yes,
Go
Mr.
forth with
President. Make a motion for a resolution in support of the project at the proposed location.
Second. I have a motion by Mr. Landry and a second by Mr. Brame. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion so moved. Great, Mark. Thank you guys for coming out. You look good sitting in that chair, Mark. So anytime you want to come back and
I really appreciate
yes,
the
visit,
time.
you're more than welcome.
I look good today.
Thank you so much, Gray. Thank you, guys. At this time, we'll move on to item number 9, consideration approving the minutes of the special meeting of the police jury dated October 28, 2010.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Stelly. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 9 passes. Item number 10, consideration approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the police jury dated November 4, 2010. I have a motion by Ms. Griffin and a second by Dr. Mackey. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 10 passes. Item number 11, consideration approving the Public Works Committee report dated November 23, 2010, said committee. There are 7 items. Let me just read those items into the record, and I think 11.1 will be an item that we'll come back and have discussion on at that point. Received report from Mr. Landry, Chair of the Nuisance Wildlife Ad Hoc Committee, with reference to wildlife problems, particularly coyotes, in densely populated areas in the parish. That was 11.1. 11.2, recommended that Calcasieu Parish Project number 2010-05, overlaying of various roads in Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, be accepted as substantially complete. 11.3, recommended that Calcasieu Parish Project number 2010-07, overlaying of various roads in Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, be accepted as substantially complete. 11.4, recommended that a resolution be adopted approving a reimbursement agreement between the police jury and Westlake Petrochemicals Limited Liability Company for costs to be incurred by Westlake Petrochemical related to relocation of an existing pipeline from the frontage of I-10 South. 11.5, recommended that an ordinance be adopted amending the Code of Ordinance of Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, to provide clarification on Section 17-45, which prohibited traffic on certain roads, to stipulate that said sections apply to through truck traffic. 11.6, recommended that a resolution be adopted accepting Pavilion Acres Phase 1 subdivision. 11.7 is advised the Calcasieu Parish was found to be in full compliance with the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development for the 2010 annual review, which will assure the parish's continued participation in the Federal Bridge Replacement Program through October 2011. At that time, I think I need to call on Mr. Tim Connor for 11.7, and I need to get a motion on those items.
So move on.
I have a motion by Mr.
11
Calvin and a second by Mr. Hassett.
May I make a request to Mr. Collins to approve items 11.2 through 11.7?
Yes. Mr.
That way we
Collins, would
leave
you be okay with
11.1
approving that?
open for
I have a
discussion.
motion from Mr. Collins to approve items 11 through 11.2 through 11.7. And I need a second.
I'm the second.
I have a second by Mr. Hassan. We will come back to 11.1. At this time, we'll take up Mr. Connor with 11.7. Mr. Connor.
I'll be brief. This is an item that comes before the jury every year, and I just wanted to stress the importance of this particular program, this off-system bridge program, that we receive federal funds every year by being in compliance. We are audited. DOTD comes in, they audit our bridge files. We're in the field making inspections, and I really just want to acknowledge the fact that our bridge inspector, Ronnie George, the big hand that he has in part of this and making sure that we comply. And as far as I recall, I don't think there's ever been a year that we have not complied, and it's been a big plus for our parish. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Is there any other questions by the jury? Any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item 11.7. We'll go back to item 11.1. At this time, I would call on Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Or I think thank you, maybe not. Back to 11.1, back to the coyote problem. During the week, Mr. Scott had done some research, and I know I think we approved 20,000. We lowered it to 20 is what that motion was. And there's actually some money in the 2010 budget that was not spent in that department. And so from what I'm understanding, I don't think that we need to spend any money. The money's already there. So we can do it with what's already in the budget. Is that correct, Mr. Wainwright? I think you visited with Mr. Scott, which will also be included in the 2011 budget.
You got the floor, Mr. Wainwright.
I'm not sure how to answer that. Maybe I can defer to Mr. Beam, honestly.
Well, when you in the budget, the answer I believe is no, Chris. The best I can try to answer the question. What we wanted, the budget for 2011, because we can't. The 2010's almost over, so they won't be doing that anyway. The 20,000 was simply, and it could be 10, it could be less, it could be more, was to allow funding within that budget to go toward that sort of service in response to what you have brought before us as a jury. But we would need some ability to have something besides that, because the officer positions were mentioned. There are nine that we need to fill. We have 8 right now. A 10th one would be an extra one, but we wouldn't intend to hire that. I think the fact that the first quarter of the year, we would come back to you right after that. We don't anticipate having a whole lot of funding, but we can't promise that. If it's a lot of activity, because now they know that you're working on that and it takes a lot of labor and effort, we would need to be able to spend more than we currently have. So I would say if you want us to respond in the level that we recommended to the Public Works Committee, that some level just be authorized to go up to. That doesn't mean we'll spend it.
So the answer
a long way of saying no, but we don't have it to spend in 2010. In 2010, I mean, we were going to get into the new year, and
maybe that didn't come out right, but there was that position wasn't filled in 2010.
That's correct.
And I guess what I was saying is that it would continue not to be filled in 2011. But I guess what you're saying is that it needs to be filled. Is that?
No, I'm sorry. I haven't been communicating well. Well, we put that in there at the time departments had to submit the budget, and I covered this with the budget committee earlier. We just didn't know which direction juries was going to go, so we planned as best we thought to put some funds in there in the event you decided to go that route. Mr. Scott, of course, had a proposal at budget committee. It didn't pass, but to go ahead and remove that out. Just because it's in the budget, we don't intend to fill that position. The recommendations, which are on this item, make it clear we don't really feel like that's appropriate. Let's be progressive in attempting something, and if we have to go that level, we could without you amending the budget. But we need to utilize some of that is really what it comes down to.
Right. So you won't fill that position?
No.
You intend on that?
No, that would be up to if you as a jury end up, I would say in April, based on what happens, that you feel like that should happen, we would go forward, but we don't intend to do that until you give us that direction, if it came to that.
All right. Knowing that, I would suggest that the motion remains the same. There is some other information that was brought to my attention earlier, is that the USDA has a program where they actually deal with these type of problems. Yeah, and I was not aware of it until a little while ago. There's a gentleman in the audience that had brought it to my attention, and he actually had spoke to him. So, before we spend any money, we certainly, I would ask that Mr. Wainwright get in touch with those people from USDA, and let's see what we can do with them. That would be a lot better than doing it on our own. I understand that they have a program that already exists that they deal with these type of things.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Scott.
Before I get into that, if you want to let Mr. Parham, if you want to bring him up and let him, Parham, if Mr. Parham wanted to mention that, if not, I can.
Yes,
I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Okay, yes, Mr.
before
Mark
I go
Parham in the
further.
audience, please. Please come up, state your name and address for the record.
I still live at the same place, Mark Parham, 3065 Old Town Road. Yeah, I spoke with Chris and Mr. Dennis. Redundancy of duties, redundancy of offices. I went out on a limb and I made a few phone calls. USDA handles this problem, these kind of particular problems. They're already working in several parishes in the state. They do this on a contractual basis. Mr. McMillan was in the game plan of hiring a full-time predator hunter. Here's your opportunity to do it. Same basic price with one exception. It puts an umbrella over the parish. They're a federal, organization. It will take nearly 100% of the liability away from the parish. Anything happens, it happens to them. They're self-insured. I've spoken with this gentleman. He would be more than willing to come and speak with y'all at y'all's request. I've got his contact information and his name. If you're willing to put out this kind of money, because basically last week I didn't see anything happen other than money's being allocated for what? I didn't see anything happen. Where's the hunter? Y'all just had $20,000 allocated. So what? I can allocate $50 into my gas tank, but I can keep it there by not driving. I suggest strongly look into this. If you hire a hunter and he catches one child, one dog, I don't know what the lawsuits are going to be, but it's going to be on us. It's going to be on you. You hire the federal organization to do it. They have the division. They are trained. They have the manpower. They have the equipment. He told me he will pick the person, hire him full-time to handle Calcasieu Parish, and if y'all are even willing to work a deal with Cameron Parish as a joint service agreement, split the funding. And this would give this man full-time work to handle the predator situation in both parishes. They've done work at Grumman. They've gotten rid of the birds in the hangars. He said, don't want to pay an extra $30,000 to repaint a wing because somebody didn't want to get rid of the birds. He said, that's our job. We do this kind of thing. They remove alligators. They remove beavers, coyotes, cougars, you name it. They have the personnel to do it. That's their job. That's all they do in this division.
Okay, Mr. Mark, let me call my parish administrator, Mr. Beam. I think he's got some insight that he want to share with us on that matter.
Before we actually came to the first committee meeting, the ad hoc committee, we met with city official, sheriff department was there. Wildlife and Fisheries is the main state. Wildlife and Fisheries was the main agency that got us up to speed on what they've done. And they talked about the State Department of Agriculture, and I know Chris was talking about USDA. But they're obviously very knowledgeable about what's been done and who's done it. I think we definitely, before we do anything, would double check that USDA isn't out there waiting to do this. But I just feel very confident that, when we met, it was the whole idea of who's doing it, who possibly has done it, who could do it, and it's just not there as far as what we've learned so far. So we'll double check, but we we don't know of anything USDA has that they can come in and just do this. Obviously, that would solve a lot of problems. We did explore all those avenues. Now, the State Department of Ag used to fund, I think, a couple of positions, and it had a lot to do with the protection of cattle and so forth, and like everything else that they're going through, it was a budget constraint, and they're not able to do it. But we were not made aware of any USDA money or personnel, but we'll certainly check that out.
Thank you, Mr. Beam. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, I don't have any questions, but for Mr. Parham. But oh, well, you can talk to him in a minute. I mean, all right. I would like to check into that, see if there's anything that, of course, I know you will. I just want to clarify a little bit on the budget issue, and so I'm just going to ask direct questions now since we done got it all out there. At all during 2010, did you have 9 officers hired?
At some points, I think we had some, but the majority of the year we probably had 8.
So by budgeting for 9 again this year, we have already, if we just stick to 9, have basically increased, even though it was 9 this year. But if you were to say we weren't going to do anything and keep 8 because we made it through last year, if we took 9 now and made it that extra because it's already there without having to add new money to the budget was where I was going with this. Now in April, once we've actually attacked this problem with, I call it, money that's already there, then we would be able to come back in April and actually have some educated movement on this. And we keep saying $20,000, but what we okayed was $35,000. That's with $20,000 for one thing, $10,000 for another, and $5,000 for another. The way it's put in the budget, it's add 1 officer, which is under animal services. That doesn't put a line item that says nuisance animal. So I just believe personally that 9 can cover the costs we need, and then if we need to, which is what happens every time we come to a meeting, there are needs that are brought up, and I just feel like responsibly as a governing official, the way I speak to people is they want us to do the best we can with what we have and don't increase. So that was my only process in bringing this forward.
I guess I would respectfully disagree on the 9, and with that, it's y'all's decision. But I met several times throughout the year with city officials, other ones. And when you work with that department on a day-to-day basis, 8 is not enough to do the task on the regular animals. Just dismiss wildlife nuisance animals altogether. If you'd have Miss Rita here, she'd ask you for 12 or 13 officers. At times, the demand for pit bull calls, the demand for picking up dead animals on the road, all the other services that we try to accomplish there, we're tremendously understaffed. We try to cover a 24-hour window of service there, especially at night. It can be really tough. 9 sounds like a lot until you do it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, parish-wide, and it's really not, and that's why we cannot respond. So I guess I disagree with saying that 8 was adequate this year. I think everyone at our shelter, all the officers, would agree with me that they would like to have that 9th. In fact, we're trying to hire that 9th now. They would like to have more for their normal duties, and this is adding new duties to that department, and that's why we asked for additional either officer or revenue for a contract service.
If I can respond real quick.
Go ahead, Mr. Scott.
I know you're understaffed. I know you're undermanned. I know you're under budgeted, but that's the world we're living in right now. And it's very difficult to continue as government to raise this world. That's not our job. Somewhere we have to decide, what should we do as government? Where should we spend the money? And it's going to be tough decisions. They're going to have to be made in the very near future. We're in a blessed parish, I have no doubt. We have a budgeted, budget, it's balanced, so we are blessed. But somewhere we have to decide, where do we stop raising individual people and take care of every one of their needs? And I think that we can do it with what we have, and that's my just personal opinion. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Mr. Guidry. We kind of discussed this with the committee at the Budget Committee, and the Budget Committee, as you will hear a little later, we were all in a unanimous decision to go ahead and move forward and not amend the budget to change what Mr. Scott wanted. Now, he has some very good ideas as far as making sure the money's spent properly. If we have the money in the budget, what we want to make sure is this full jury this money isn't spent until it's enacted by this full jury, which we could have those type of stipulations in there. And in the Budget Committee meeting, we had those agreements made with our staff. So that's kind of one of the things. I want to respond to Mr. Parham's comment. I think, personally, we do need a full-time nuisance officer here in Calcasieu Parish to deal with not only the coyotes, but the coy dogs, as far as the feral hogs, the beavers, the different things, problems that we have in here. But as the ad hoc committee met, I agreed to back up on that issue and not push forward with it to get some data. And that's what we're about, getting the data until April to find out if we're going to truly need this. And we are doing something as that money is assigned to be sent. We're going to deal with it on a case-by-case basis. Every time that there's a call, that'll be tracked. We'll know. We'll have some money to spend on that behalf. We'll be able to protect the citizens out there. We're not going to alleviate this problem, but what we have to do is work to control this problem. And the coyotes and feral coy dogs and feral hogs are a true problem throughout the entire United States, and they are a problem here in Calcasieu Parish. Back in 2005, I had a tremendous opportunity to work with a federal organization. I just really have a problem thinking the USDA from a federal standpoint is going to step in here and solve our problems here in Calcasieu Parish with the nuisance animals. I'm interested to see what kind of feedback we get from Mr. Wainwright when he goes to those guys, but I like having a local contact of local people that work for this parish, so if the job's not getting done, we as police jurors can go to Mr. Wainwright and our animal services and say, we got a problem, I got constituents complaining, I want us to fix it. I don't want to have to go through federal people again. I've done that once and it wasn't too pleasant. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Mr. Stelly.
I just think for clarification here, going back to the statement Mr. Parham said, I think our goal in the on 11-1 was to earmark $20,000 for a quick response. Am I not right, Brian? And that's what the $20,000 was intended for us to do something. If someone calls in, this had nothing to do with the 11 budget. This was just money that we allocated for a quick fix, if you want to call it that. If somebody calls, that we will be able to respond. We will allow them to spend up to $20,000 without coming back and saying they needed more. Is that correct?
Yes, but it is within the 2011 budget.
It is a
more
budget
of
item.
honoring what our understanding and responding to what the jury is saying. If we need to use it for those purposes, are you okay with, in this case, up to $20,000? That's for a full year, keep in mind, and as just our best estimate. I can't, we don't know yet. We got to wait and see what happens. I do not expect to have to spend, honestly, near that much, because if you remember the matrix, as Alan called it, the highest priorities would get trappers called out on a contract basis.
Well, I think we did accomplish something by putting this on tonight's agenda. You know, to say that we haven't accomplished anything, I think is not a true statement by any means. Going back to the statement Mr. Scott said, it's no longer $35,000; it's now $25,000.
Well, and I want to clarify that, and I apologize if it's a little confusing. It's actually 25. The 10 was an estimate of what an education campaign might cost. We actually want to propose to you that in that first quarter we develop that plan, because it needs to be more targeted, and come back to you and go through the budget committee, probably ask for those funds to be taken from gaming, and we'd have a much better number. We aren't by this action, if you approve it tonight, you're not authorizing $10,000 for education. We just trying to let you know, well, here's what it might cost. It's probably a little on the high end, but it costs a lot to get the word out effectively. But you can't do this one like litter and put a bunch of billboards, because a lot of people aren't even affected.
That's right.
But you might have to do neighborhood targeted things, and it's just a harder thing to pin down.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Stelly. Mr. Andrew Point.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a composite here to some degree. Hal, I agree with you that probably somebody does need to be hired. But I would not be in favor of hiring Joe Sixpack to get out there and he says he can go out and get rid of coyotes. I think the idea of looking into the USDA, I think, is probably a good idea. The gentleman that was here the other night that demonstrated the traps and so on and so forth, I asked a question about how many in the state of Louisiana were there that was doing what he was doing. He said less than 30. When I was getting ready to leave, he was still outside, and I asked him, I said, where'd you get your training from? He said, I'm self-taught. Now, how long does it take you to learn that trade? I have no clue. But we need to quit throwing darts at the wall and come up with a basic formula of which direction we're going to go in. All I've heard here tonight is this recommendation and that recommendation, and nothing really solid. So go back to the committee, and you're the chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that you gather your members of this committee and go back to the drawing board and try to come up with some formula that gives us a direction and going. I don't think we have a benchmark right now. I think everything we're talking about is speculation and that sort of thing. And I think it's your duty as a chairman to put this committee back on the floor and come up with something of a recommendation that we can all live with.
Mr. President.
Hold on just a minute, Mr.
Yield the floor.
I'll let, thank you, Mr. Andrew Point. I'm going to let Mr. Landry comment on that. Mr. Landry?
The committee has met a couple of times. There's really no point that I see in them meeting again. We've beaten a dead coyote to death. What we're going to do from this point, and they're getting the information together. They have to move forward. The staff has a plan. They presented that to us at the committee and again here the other night. And the next few months are going to be information gathering and moving forward. The final decisions and directions that we're going to go will be decided in April after we go through and after the staff gets the information. We have to give them the authority to move forward to be able to get that information and come back to us in April and tell us, okay, this is what has happened in those first few months. There's no use in the committee meeting again. We've met. We've got to this point. We need to give the staff the authority to move forward. In the next few months, they will get that information, and then it'll be in stone after that, and we'll know exactly where to go from that point.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. I'll call on Mr. Brian Beam at this point.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, on the 23rd at Public Works Committee, and I'm sorry, you may not have your sheet in front of it. We made the recommendations made, which y'all approved to recommend tonight. And if you approve these, they're really more concrete than that. The money was just to allow us to go forward, but if you approve it, the Animal Services will begin taking these calls and prioritizing and start doing that and responding to those calls. We will start finding information about how to put an education program together, but it wouldn't be waiting until April. We would start going to on a more active basis and filtering those calls and actually doing it. So I believe it's a very solid direction, and the committee has done its work well. You certainly can meet again, but our intention when we did that was responding to what we all heard, and it's pretty concrete. We just don't know how much it's going to take, but we're going to start that process.
Thank you, Mr. Beam. I have one more speaker, Mr. Spell.
Thank you, Mr. President. My stance has not changed. I guess going through our proposed budget, we have had about 20 departments and programs that have cut their budget. That 10% reduction in our budget for 2011, that came from departments throughout the police jury cutting their individual budgets. I'm sure any of those departments that cut their budget would love to have an extra 20 grand. Animal control. I would love to see them have an extra 20 grand just so they could do what they're doing now, much less handle another problem or program. So I don't deny this is a legitimate problem. It's serious. And, you know, I would personally love to be able to provide the solution, but I'm just looking at it from a standpoint that we've had people within our organization that have already made sacrifices and cut their budgets, and here we are kind of approaching a new program with additional funding where we could be putting this funding in another existing department or program that could be used to enhance services we already provide. That's the reasoning behind my position. My objection remains the same, and I just wanted to state that for the record. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Spell. Mr. Size.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Like we say, I'm hearing different things being said, but two of the things I heard, the wildlife and fishery gentleman, when he came to his presentation, and the trapper, both said that we're not going to get rid of this problem. And so I'm thinking that with us doing the budget of going after and trapping a few and going after here, and we're not going to get rid of this problem. One thing I got from the presentation that the gentleman gave that I thought is what we need to look at is that he said that whether it was beavers or whether it was coyotes, he said that you have to manage it. He said what made him successful was that he managed it. So it wasn't that he went out there and he shot a few when somebody called, or he got a few over here when somebody called, or he went and found it. He went and he found how to manage it. And so that's why I do agree with Mr. Anderpoint that maybe we need to look at all of what we have heard, because we've heard a lot, and we're still talking a lot. I think we need to take all of what we've heard, and we do need to come back together and say, okay, let's take something and go with this. But I really believe that what I heard, the managing part, is what we have to go after, because I've read it and I've heard it, that we're not going to get rid of the problem. So the main thing I got out of it was that we need to try to manage it, and that's how he was successful. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Size. Mr. Breen.
Thank you. Last week at the committee meeting, Ms. Griffin was real interested in hearing about what McNeese was, how they were going to help us. And I saw on the news that McNeese was going to step up to the plate and help us. I really didn't catch the whole article, but does anybody know what they're going to do? Alan, you know?
Go ahead, Mr. Wainwright.
Yes, sir. I met with McNeese officials, Drs. Chip Lemieux and Dr. Eddie Lyons today for quite some time. They are, in fact, very interested in a program, a graduate assistant program, essentially, through their department. We went back to some old agreements and basically worked on some language to start the skeleton of the framework of what we would draft up as an agreement. There's a lot of details to be put in place. Unfortunately, there's going to be some cost to that program, and we're talking about $20,000 right now, and just to get it out on the table immediately. That study will cost money. There's a graduate assistant that will have to be funded to do the work. There's the monitors that they'll want to, when they catch the coyotes, they're going to put radio control monitors on it. Those monitors are expensive. So we're going to be looking at additional funds to go through a program like that. I would love to do it. I think it's along the lines of what Mr. Sice is saying. It will help us determine how to manage this coyote problem. It may help us identify if we really have a problem. So I'd like to go through that process, but there again, we're going to need to come back for the jury, budget committee perhaps, for separate funding for that program. After meeting today, I think, I'd want to approach the city of Lake Charles. Some of our ideas would be to target that program in urban areas simply because I think that would be most practical. So there's a lot of details to be worked out, but they were very positive and very interested in initiating a program.
Alan, do they not have any funding themselves? Why would we have to fund something like that for them? I
I didn't ask that question, Mr. Brown.
Well, I'm just, you know, if it's going to be a curriculum or whatever, graduate class, why do we have to fund it? Now, McNeese can fund it. It's a help to the community.
We did agree to look for Corey, who was here with Wildlife and Fisheries. Thinks there may be some funds through Wildlife and Fisheries to contribute to the cost of that. I think it's going to have to be a team effort, honestly. But if we want to present it in the way that McNeese is going to fund the entire program, I'm not sure we're going to get it going.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Got a couple of questions just to clarify, because there seems to be just talking to some other jurors prior to the meeting, that for this money to be spent, that y'all were going to be coming back to the jury for approval of that, and I don't see that being the case. We're approving this money to be spent. Just a straight question to you. $5,000 earmarked for a purchase of traps.
Yes, sir.
We had a gentleman come up here last week, showed us a couple of different traps. Do you have plans to buy certain traps right now?
Yes, sir. As we discussed at that last meeting, we would probably buy 10 traps, or maybe an estimate of $200 per trap. So that's $2,000. Those traps may or may not get damaged when we actually have some successful trappings, and we would have the rest of the money would be there for replacement traps. So there again, you may not spend all that money. That's an earmark for that purpose.
Okay. I've never heard any, maybe I just missed it, I've never heard any clarification. We trap one, what happens?
It will be euthanized.
We will have personnel trained to be able to go.
In fact, yes, sir.
Obviously, it's a lot different than a dog.
Yes, sir. In fact, in talking to the McNeese today, they would like to do some additional research on those. There's some studies of what those animals are eating, the size, things like that. So there's some steps we would take on the research side, but in the end, we would euthanize that animal.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with you, Mr. Sykes. It sounds like you was wanting to make when you say manage, if you're going to management, you have to hire a full-time person. And the committee, and last week we all agreed here, 9 to 3 is what it says on our agenda, that we agreed to move forward in what was put before us, and that's not to go all the way and hire someone yet. And yeah, that's probably come March, April timeframe. I would guess that that's what they're going to come back and tell us, that to move forward and to manage it, you're going to have to hire someone. But we're not to that point yet. And we decided not to spend that much money. We're trying to spend the least amount that we can, but yet still move forward with it. So, I mean, you know, if you want to make a motion to hire a full-time person right now, I know Mr. McMillan, he'll be behind you. But I would make a motion that we move forward as we agreed last week.
Well, I just want to.
Let me just move forward to Mr. Sykes on that.
Have a rebuttal with Mr. Landry. Just like Mr. Wainwright said a while ago, well, I said an approach. An approach doesn't necessarily mean hiring someone. I said an approach. Just like I said, the study that we are looking at is to manage it. And so to manage it doesn't necessarily mean you have to hire someone. Like you're saying, to understand it and to find out exactly what it means, you know, at the same time, you know, it may wind up being that. But the idea is that right now we have nothing but just buy some traps, go out there and trap a few, shoot a few, or whatever. But, you know, I mean, so my thing is that I felt what I got out of the whole presentation that he said was that, and what I've heard everybody else say, you're not going to get rid of them. So I'm just saying, I'm suggesting an approach. But my approach doesn't necessarily mean hire somebody. My approach doesn't necessarily mean hire somebody. It means, you know, that the approach that McNeese can take it, just like Mr. Wainwright said. That's all my approach means. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sykes. I'll go to Mr. Beeman. I'll come back to you, Ms. Griffin.
I would, I think it helps to explain, we do have an approach. It's not, the trapper part keeps getting the attention because it's more interesting, I think, to watch a guy show how a trap works. there's a lot being, the boring part of these things called matrices and calls, but that's the approach. What you're approving is, there's a lot of intangibles that they don't cost any more outlay of dollars, but it's deciding to use somebody's time. And we're talking about tracking data. We've never done that on calls. We're talking about prioritizing calls, which means a person getting a call is going to have to discuss it with the supervisor. Is this a high priority or is this a low priority? Do we send out an animal services officer first? Do we, and at some point, if it gets to a higher level, no, a guy got bit, we need to call we need immediate attention. We need to get a trapper on this. All of that takes staff time, but there's a process. And so you approved a process. And we didn't want to bore you with every little detail, but that matrix that was handed out, that spreadsheet that showed what happens when somebody calls, what do we ask them, that's the approach. And you've approved that, and our estimate is this is what it's going to take to start that going. And Chris is right. We don't know how much it's going to end up, but in about 3 months we can tell you we get a few calls, we get a whole lot of calls, but we can start finding that out. But we just need a little bit of funding to say you want to use your people on that process because you're responding to what you're saying the public is coming to you with, and we're trying to respond to you.
Thank you, Mr. Beam. Ms. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, we've discussed a lot tonight, but I have a couple of questions. What is the total amount of the budget again, Mr. Beam?
For animal services?
The total amount of Calcasieu Parish Police jury budget for the year of 2011 that we have proposed.
Proposed budget is $161 million.
That's good enough.
Point something.
We're dealing with a budget with $161 million, and I find it hard to believe that we're so caught up with $35,000. $35,000, and the budget is $161 million. The most important thing is that we're dealing with the possibility of a human being being injured because of a bite from a coyote or any other wild animal. Now, I'm a homemaker. I'm on the budget, and I'm sure everybody here is on the budget. But I will not cut back and refrain from any funds that may have an effect on a human being's life. We have one instance, one attack was reported, and I don't want to be a part of someone else being attacked because of $35,000 that we may or may not use all of the money. It's not that we're going to use the money. And, you know, I know the word around every table, breakfast, dinner, and supper, is we need to cut back. We don't want any big government. We don't want to spend. No, we don't want to spend. But we have to make sure that we take care of our citizens and not cut back when a human being's life is involved with it. As my friend Mr. Scott said, that's my personal opinion. And I just think that $35,000 that may prevent, even though we cannot control this situation, that may prevent someone from being injured, I don't think it needs to be discussed. And I thank you for your time, and I call for a vote on this, because I cannot agree with taking this $35,000 out of this budget. I need for us to move forward so that we could at least contain the situation that we're in. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. I'll have closing comments by Mr. Scott.
Yeah, real quick, on the $63,000 that we're budgeting in for this in 2011, so that's the number we're looking at overall. We've asked Mr. Boland to cut juvenile justice, and if we shouldn't have cut anything, because I know we're affecting kids when we cut juvenile justice, the same way we could be affecting a kid if we're not killing a coyote. So people are affected in every area. So you can't look at it in just a general, this is the way we do it because we're helping people, because everything we do here helps people, and there's public safety involved in a lot of it. So public works, cleaning ditches the right way, marking the roads, bright signs, we affect people in everything we do, and so I appreciate that. So I would And it wasn't to take the money out of what they're going to do. It was to not add any new money to the problem for them to work with. It was to work within their means, which I know is tough. And if they need something, like they keep saying, we'll need something, we'll come to you in the future, then come in the future and say, okay, this is where we've been at, this is what we spent. And I just thought that was being a good steward. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. I'll go back to Ms. Griffin.
Thank you. Just for clarification, it is my understanding that I am speaking about the $35,000 that we're talking about right here specifically on 11.1. I was not addressing the $65,000 because this is not on 11.1. I'm specifically speaking about this item that we're talking about. Now, in reference to how we feel about different situations and what we're cutting back on and what we're not cutting back on and how we're going to do it. That is why we have 15 police jurors that represents 15 districts who have 15 different way of thinking about things. And it is important for us to understand and respect each other, how we feel about it. This is how I feel about it. I was elected to represent the people of Calcasieu Parish Police Jury District 3 and the whole parish as a whole. My stand will not change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin.
Call for a roll call vote at this time.
Ms. Griffin. Mr. Morg, do you want to have a closing comment? I'll give you 1 minute.
Thank you. Yeah, you're haggling about $35,000. I agree with you. When y'all cut your complete creative department out, which was great, but then you added $300,000 to homeless prevention, and it wasn't funded for the last 4 years, and now you add $300,000 to it. That's beside the point. Back to this, I have the opportunity and the authority to represent almost 3,000 voters in Calcasieu Parish. We will not stand by and accept the liability that this is going to bring on the parish if somebody gets hurt. If this board chooses, however, to go with USDA and put an umbrella over the parish and protect the parish, we will back this 100% with 3,000 voices. This is up to y'all. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Morg. Madam Secretary, could you read back the motion that Mr. Landry?
As I appreciated, the motion on the floor is to approve recommendation 11.1 as stated on the agenda.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. As stated, yes. Okay. Madam Secretary, at this time, we'll take a roll call vote.
Yes, sir. Mr. Andropont?
Yes.
Mr. Brain?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Farnham?
Yes.
Mrs. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Hassan?
No.
Mr. Landry?
Yes.
Dr. Mackey? Yes. Mr. McMillan?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
No.
Mr. Spell?
No.
Excuse me, Mr. Stelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sias?
Yes.
Mrs. Trimming? Yes. Motion carried 10-3.
Motion carry. Thank you, Madam Secretary. At this time, we'll move on to item number 12, consideration approving the Agenda Committee report dated November 23rd, 2010.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Andropont and a second by Mr. Collins. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 12 passes. Item number 13, consideration approving the Budget Committee report dated December 2nd, 2010. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, President Guidry. We had a Budget Committee meeting where we had a public hearing. And after some discussion on different items of the budget, we as a budget committee recommended the approval of the parish budget for the fiscal year 2011 at the police jury's regular meeting on December 16, 2010. That's my motion.
Motion to discuss?
Motion to discuss. Mr. Scott.
So motion to approve is what I'm motioning. Once we get a second, then we can have discussion.
We have a motion by Mr. McMillan to approve and a second by Ms. Trimming. We have discussion. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, I would just like to put in the form of a motion, I would like to remove the 63.5 from the budget for 2011. Thank you, Mr. President.
Welcome. I have a motion by Mr. Scott. Is there going to follow with the second?
There's already a motion on the floor by Mr. McMillan.
McMillan.
And a second.
And a second. So, Mr. Scott, you just wanted to add that in to Mr. McMillan's approval of the Budget Committee report. Is that my understanding of what you wanted to do?
I'm good.
I request a ruling from legal counsel.
There's a motion on the floor
Legal
to
counsel,
approve
Mr.
the
Allen Smith.
budget that has been proposed.
We had a motion and a second.
A motion and a second. You would have to vote on that. I presume that it will pass. If Mr. Scott would then want to amend the budget to remove an item, he could make a motion to amend that budget to remove an item from the budget. And then if that passes, it would be removed. If it does not pass, the budget would stand as approved. So you have to vote on Mr. McMillan's motion to approve the budget.
Would you want to make a motion, Mr. Scott?
Let's vote on the other
Got to
motion.
vote on McMillan's motion.
You must vote on Mr. McMillan's motion, which is on the floor, which is to approve the budget.
Approve the budget report. Madam Secretary. Hold on a minute, Madam Secretary. We have discussion. Mr. Spell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to make a couple of positive comments about the budget. I did mention earlier that we've had 20 departments programs cut, and an overall 10% reduction in our budget, which was basically a reduction from 180 to 160 and change million. I think that represents a great effort by our staff, Ms. Buffkin, Mr. Milner, Brian Beam, all our department heads. They tighten their belt, and I think it puts a great foot forward, and I know that took a lot of work, and I just want to tell them thank you. And even though we can always be better, I think y'all did a great job, and I wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Spell. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you. And one other tightening move that this parish has made too is no pay increases in the year 2011 for any of our employees. So we are tightening our belts in Calcasieu Parish. We heard what the public had to say, and I think we've worked real hard to make sure that we've had a really good opportunity to bring in a budget that's going to really reflect what we want to do in the parish, but yet spend the money as we have in the past very wisely. But we also understand that it's a time that we all are tightening down. So with that being said, the motion on the floor to approve Mr. Guidry from our budget committee with a second is something I think we need to vote on. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Scott.
Mr. McMillan, you said something that sparked me, and it's true. We're not giving our employees who work hard that raise, and that was a tough decision to make. And because of that, and I know how hard they work, I'm not going to make an amendment to change the budget. I already know that it's a tough job, and they do it because of it's their employment, but they're serving the same reason we do. We get paid for what we're doing, but it's a service we put in there. So because of that, I'm not going to make an amendment. I know our staff does a great job with the way they spend money. I know that we're all good stewards of the taxpayers' money, so I appreciate that. So thank you, Mr. President.
I appreciate you, Mr. Scott. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 13 passes. Item number 14, consideration approving the General Insurance Committee report dated December 2nd, 2010. Ms. Griffin.
Thank you, sir. The Insurance Committee met earlier this evening, and this is the conclusion that we bring to you for your approval. We unanimously approved to ratify the administrative staff approval of the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury's property insurance proposal submittal by Allianz Global Cooperation and Specialty Marine Insurance Company for the police jury periods of November the 22nd, 2012 to January 31st, 2012, and January 31st, 2012 to January 31st, 2013. I move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Griffin and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 14 passes. Item number 15, consideration of adopting a resolution. Mr. McMillan, I thought that I made an
Meeting's
announcement
supposed to be over by now.
that we would cut off all cell phones. Item number 15, consideration of adopting a resolution indicating objection, no objection, following
15 all
proposed
bullets.
projects in Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana. I have a motion I have by Mr. Andrew Point and a second by Mr. Brame on those two bullets. Let me just read those into the record, please. 15.1, proposal of Drew Renier and Charles Lanier and Associates to construct a 50 by 70 boathouse and 8 by 45 access walkway for erosion protection and private recreational use. 15.2, proposal of Jordan Enterprises of Louisiana and Araby Environmental Solutions to construct foundation and driveways to support the installation of 6 commercial buildings. I have a motion by Mr. Andrew Point and a second by Mr. Brame. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 15 and all bullets pass. Item number 16, consideration of authorizing the Director of Planning and Development to notify the following property owners in accordance with Article 2 of Chapter 6 of the Code of Ordinance of the Parish of Calcasieu, Louisiana, to show cause at a public hearing on January 20, 2011, and the first regular police jury meeting thereafter as to why the structures on the properties as stipulated should not be condemned. There were 7 items. Let me just read the, thank you, Mr. Scott. Let me just read those into the record, please. 16.1, 4337 Queen Street, Mossville area. 16.2, 321 Dalton Road, Westlake area. 16.3, 610 Benny Lane, South Lake Charles. 16.4, 1054 Amateur Road, Corliss area. 16.5, 579 Bankins Road, North Sulphur area. 16.6, 2006 Peachsay Road, Corliss area. 16.7, 3534 Palm Drive, North Sulphur. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. McMillan. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Motion passed on all bullets. 17, consideration of adopting an ordinance rescinding ordinance number 4372 to revert property from RM multifamily residential to R2 mixed residential, with said property located on southwest corner of John Stein Road and Miller Avenue in Ward 4. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Ms. Griffin. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 17 passes. Item number 18, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the structure and nominations for appointments to a review panel for the purpose of providing input on draft recommendations from staff regarding a unified development code for Calcasieu Parish. This time I would call on Ms. Jennifer Wallace. Please come to the mic and state your name and position here with the parish.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Jennifer Wallace, and I work in the planning department as an assistant director. And I'm glad I made it up here tonight. I was scared I was going to have to come back tomorrow, so I appreciate it. Just to tell you a little bit about it, first of all, you all do have an attachment in your binder for item number 18. And just to tell you what we're trying to do tonight, we are putting together a unified development code that will update our zoning and subdivision codes and hopefully make our ordinances more user-friendly and in just a more updated format that will help citizens and developers and the staff accordingly. As part of the process of adopting a unified development code, the staff feels that it's very important for us to get as much public input as we can. So before we bring the document to all of you for adoption, we would like for you guys to set up a public review panel made up of a broad range of citizens in Calcasieu Parish that can give us some input on how the development community might feel about these regulations. And Joe Citizen, how does he feel about these regulations? So what I have before you is something that we've worked hard on as a staff, and we've worked really closely with the Planning and Zoning Liaison Group to put together a good structure. We hope you'll approve it tonight. And if I could just read through it and for the record, for the public at home, and then we'll talk about any questions you might have. For the development community where there were organizations that were set up for professionals, we actually reached out to those groups to get nominations from them, and what you have before you is the staff selection that we would propose that you accept. From the realtors, we are proposing Richmond Reinauer and Tommy Eastman. They were both nominated by the Southwest Louisiana Association of Realtors, and we feel that there's a good mix there because one specializes in commercial realty and the other specializes in residential realty. On the builder side, it's the same situation, commercial and residential. They were nominated by the Home Builders Association of Southwest Louisiana, and we propose Harvey Bassett and Don Veroni. Architects, Jeff Kudla. Engineer, John Lowry. Utilities, Calvin Thibodeau. And those were proposed by the American Institute of Architects Southwest Louisiana chapter, the Louisiana Engineering Society, the Lake Charles chapter, and the Lake Charles Utility Coordinating Council. Now, from the staff side, we put together some names, and then we went to the Planning and Zoning Liaison Group and got their stamp of approval on these names. Will Drost, representing the agricultural and timber interest. Vision Calcasieu Citizens Task Force member, Terry Backus. Developer, we have 2, Wallace Nichols and Matt Red. And then at large, Joe Citizen, we have 2 on the east side, Philip Busby and Brad Evans, and on the west side, Diane Dronette and Troy Broussard. I have contacted all of these people personally, and they are interested in participating and would be happy to do so if you'll do a resolution tonight adopting this structure and the proposed membership. And if you have any questions.
Thanks for the information, Ms. Wallace. We do have some questions. I'll call on my Vice President at this time, Mr. Horner.
Thank you for your work on this. When are we going to first see the draft?
I hope in January. It's about this thick.
You know, I guess what I'm getting at is we just extended the IDO for another till the end of this year.
The end of this year,
and,
right?
So we're going to be into January, and we're still not going to have anything. We're going to end up having to either extend the IDO or abolish the IDO.
No. We're not extending the IDO. I promised all of you when we came before you in September that was it. We're very fortunate that our slow time of the year in the planning department is pretty much January through March, which is the period that we're going to be working through this, and we're just going to get through it.
So we'll have a definite need to expedite this process as quick as everybody can get comfortable with it to get us to a point to where we don't have that lapse in coverage. Because right now the IDO's kind of covering the gaps that we feel like we have in things. So, yeah, that would be a great move. I'm definitely not in favor of extending the IDO at all, but this would be a great move. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vickers, would you want to comment on this item? Is there any comments that you like? This time I call on Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are you proposing we're not going to extend the IDO? Well, then as of December 31st,
it goes away.
It goes away, and we revert back to all of our old codes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
When will the meeting start of this?
I'm planning in January after the holidays.
Okay, and these are going to be public meetings, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
A minimum of 3.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Is there any discussion by the jury? We do have discussion. Mr. Scott.
I know how involved the realtors were in this, and I know how much pressure they put on this. You know, I was in favor of moving forward with some IDO, actually moving forward with some vision. And 2 of the names on here that aren't under realtor, I see Harvey Bassett, and it's Century 21 Bassett, which is real estate. And I see Mr. Matt Red, which is real estate. So, I mean, now we have 4 realtors, even though 2 of them aren't in there. And I'm just a little concerned that the realtors in this area are saying we want to direct the path of the way this is going instead of being open in the way that this body moves and the way the planning and development's moving. So it's just a statement, but I would like to at least make sure that they're representing the areas they're representing and not their realtor part of it.
If I could address
Go ahead, Ms. Wallace.
I think what we have to remember is that all of these meetings will be open to the public. We've talked to a number of people. I've talked to a minimum of 3 people in each category that are interested in participating. So when those people aren't chosen tonight, they're going to be invited to every public meeting. So in my heart, I feel that no matter how many realtors we have on there, no matter how many developers, as long as the citizens are willing to participate, we're going to get the best project that we can. And the other thing is this group is not actually going to be voting. They won't have any legislative powers. They're a sounding board for the staff to present you with this good product. So I feel very comfortable with this group and that we're going to get a wide range of comments and input.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Spell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Wallace, how long has the IDO been in effect?
It was 2 years in September.
So now we're going to have a situation where we've had developers toeing the line, bearing extra costs to put up with new standards, and now they're just going to go away. And these developers who have been toeing the line with the new standards are now at a different disadvantage come January 1st because now there's no standards. So now you have developers that can come in and don't have to adhere to the requirements that we've been having for the last 2 years. And I'm a little concerned that there's going to be a bum rush. And what I'm going to have to deal with is calls from people that have been playing by the rules for the last 2 years saying, how can this be fair? Do you have any comments on that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
The first thing is we have to keep in mind the economy that we're in, and I know I've said it a number of times to all of you that in a way we're fortunate to be experiencing the economy that we're experiencing because development has been slow. I think that, and Mr. Vickers can correct me if I'm wrong, but since we enacted the IDO over 2 years ago, I think we've only had 2 major subdivision developments. So I don't know that it's realistic to expect that we'll have a rush of developers coming in with plans ready to go come January 1st. I just don't see that happening. And then the second thing is this is a huge document. I know that I personally didn't anticipate it being as liver-like. The more we chew on it, the bigger it gets. I didn't anticipate that, but after what we went through for Vision Calcasieu, we know that the one thing we absolutely do not want to do is rush this process. And I'm telling you that the draft document I have sitting on my desk is over 300 pages in size. And I'm just personally, I'm not willing to sign off on a product and bring it to the public for review and bring it to you guys, not being able to say it's the best thing we've got. I'm just not willing to do that. I think reverting from the IDO to our old codes is better than me giving you a product that's not 100%.
Ms. Wallace, I agree 100% in thoroughness. But now I'm in a compromised position with people because they went by one set of rules, and come January 1st, everybody else doesn't have to go by those rules. I mean, I don't want to dwell on it. We're going to be hearing about that, and how we address it, I think that's going to need to be discussed. But, Ms. Wallace, I do appreciate the work that you've been doing. I know it is a tremendous process. So I don't mean to be overly critical. I just want to share, I think there's some complications coming down the road. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Spill. Mr. Landry.
I'll pass. Thank you.
Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Wallace, I want to thank you for putting this committee together. Because just like you said, what you're going to be presenting to us, it's going to be much more than we as jurors can absorb. We're going to need that input from the people that is most affected. And we experienced that just here a couple of weeks ago, where we had several large landowners that were going to be drastically affected by the coastal zone. And I do hope that we take this committee's recommendations a little bit better than we did those landowners, because we had a meeting with them, we asked them for their input, and then it was recommended to go against what they asked for. That being said, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Mr. Brame.
Thank you. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Second. We have one on the floor.
It's already,
Oh, we already have a motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Brame. Mr. Pornum.
I'd like to get my hands on that document as soon as I can get my hands on it, because it, like you said, I don't want to be caught with a pound of liver in my mouth right at the end. I want to be able to chew on it a little while to understand it more fully, so that we don't have a document in our hands that we're trying to make a decision on at the last minute. So,
well, we
as soon as I
plan
can
to
get
get
a
it
draft,
out to all of
I
you.
would like to have
As soon as it's ready to roll, we're going to give it out to all of you and our committee at the same time. So everybody's going to have all the same time to review it.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Hassan.
I just have a quick question. My understanding is the meeting will be in this room.
I don't know that we've determined that. I don't think we've worked out those logistics. Me personally, I would rather have everybody sitting around a table. But we'll advertise it, we'll release it to the media, and we've already got an email list going with Vision Calcasieu that we can send a blast out to, notifying them of the date, time, and location.
This is such a a drastic change to our codes and ordinances, I think this public meeting should be held on CGov for all of the public to see.
I think that's a good suggestion, Mr. Hassan.
Is that a problem, Mr. Bean?
Yes, that is what we did with our Vision Calcasieu meetings. We filmed everything, so we'd definitely be open to that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Is there any other questions by the jury? Any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item passed. Ms. Wallace, thank you for your time, and you did an outstanding job. Thank you, Ms. Wallace.
Move on number 19 with the amended
Thank you, Ms. Trimmy.
Gustav Ike
Let me
recovery
read it.
proposals for the city of Lake Charles and also for the city of DeQuincy.
You read it for me, Ms. Trimmy. I guess I don't have to read it then.
No, that's why I
We have
read
a
it.
motion
I read it.
and a second on item 19. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 19 passes. Thank you, Ms. Trimmy. Consideration of adopting a resolution approving, item 20, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a lease agreement in the amount of $100 annually between the police jury and Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Roach for property located at 2411 William Street, Westlake, Louisiana, that was acquired through a flood mitigation grant and must remain open space. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Scott. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 20 passes. Item number 21, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a renewal of a legislative consulting agreement between the police jury and Southern
So moved.
Strategy Group of Louisiana for legislative monitoring services for the year of 2011. I have a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 21 passes. Item number 22, consideration of adopting a resolution approving an amendment to the police jury section 125 flex benefits
So moved.
plan. I have a motion by Mr. Size and a second by Dr. Mackey. We have discussion. Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Milner, what are those amendments?
Well, they're related to the healthcare plan changes, and they're one of them is like raising the age to 27 for dependent coverage. They're those kind of
Just clearing up the language. To
yeah,
follow
just
the
so
new-
we can comply with their Internal Revenue Service requirements that we made the changes that were applicable to the healthcare plan changes made by the federal government.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Thank you, Mr. Milner. We had a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I have a question.
We do have discussion. Ms. Griffin.
To Mr. Milner, may I?
Yes, you may,
And
Ms.
when
Griffin.
will it become effective?
This will be for the 2011 calendar year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 22 passes. Item
Move
number
on
23,
23.
consideration of adopting a resolution approving an adoption
Second.
agreement between the police jury and Special Services District with reference to police jury section 125 flex benefits. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. McMillan. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 23 passes. Item number 24, consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the submittal of a
Move on
grant
24.
application in the amount of $27,903 to the Louisiana Governor Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness with assistance with planning for interoperable communication. I have a motion by Mr. Collins and a second by Mr. Brame. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 24 passes. Item number 25, take appropriate action.
Move
fill
to
a
defer
vacancy
for
created
30
by the
days.
resignation of
Second.
Mr. Gavin Abshire as a member of the Board of Commissioners of Gravity Drainage District Number 8 of Ward 1. I have a motion by Mr. Spell and a second by Dr. Mackey. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 25 passes. Item number 26, take appropriate action to fill a vacancy created by the resignation of Mr. Alvin Simmons as a member of the Board of Commissioners of Waterwork District Number 2 of Ward 4.
Move to appoint Reverend Alvin Noel.
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Ms. Griffin. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 26 passes. Item number 27,
Move on
take
to
appropriate action on the expiration of the term of Ms. Ann Mullazon as a
Jonathan.
member of the Board of Directors of the Southwest Louisiana Convention and Visitors Bureau. I have a motion by Ms.
Jonathan
Trimmy
Johnson.
and a
To
second.
appoint Jonathan Johnson. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Trimmy. Thank you very much. I have a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Mr. Fordham. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 27 passes. Item number 28, take appropriate action on the
on
expiration
number
of the
28.
term of Mr. Jerry LeBlanc as a member of the Board of Directors of Southwest Louisiana Convention and Visitors Bureau. I have a motion by
To appoint
Ms.
Mr.
Trimmy
Rob King.
and a second by Ms. Griffin to appoint Mr. Rob King. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 28 passes. Item number 29, take appropriate action on the expiration of the term of Ms. Evelyn White as a member of the Board of Directors of West Calcasieu Community Center Authority. I have a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Mr. McMillan. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 29 passes. Item number 30, consideration of accepting
Move to
Prairie Lake
accept.
Park improvements, Phase 1D, as substantially complete. Mr. Brain.
I'm good.
I have a motion by Mr.
Second.
Paul and a second by Mr. Stelly. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 30 passes. Before I adjourn, let me just ask that all the jurors please remain here so we can conduct our Christmas activities. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I have a motion and a second. We are now adjourned.